Hi, my name is Lily Knight, and this is my final response to the Invisibilia podcast. In this PowerPoint slide, I'm going to be arguing on the side that technology has an overall negative impact on our society, and although there are many positive aspects and benefits of technology, I think that overall the advancement of technology will lead to a society filled with more dependable people and with more people that are unable to fully think for themselves because they will have technology to think for them. The first point I want to make is that an increase of technology will decrease the privacy that we have. An example of this invasion of privacy from the podcast is Steve, who was one of the first people to receive a speeding ticket in the mail from a camera on the road. He wasn't aware that his picture was being taken or that he was even receiving a speeding ticket at all. His privacy was invaded when the picture of him was taken without his permission and without his knowledge. Aside from Steve's story, if you think about it in our everyday lives, we're being watched and monitored pretty consistently. For example, surveillance cameras are in most public places. There are also cameras watching us while we drive in our cars, and I think that most people would consider their cars to be relatively private, somewhat secure, but the feeling of security is taken away when you find out that you're being watched for a large portion of your drive. Of course, that depends on where you are driving, but if you're on main roads, you're likely being recorded and watched. This is obviously a negative thing because being monitored and being watched can take away a person's feeling of security and can end up leaving people feeling violated and like their privacy was invaded. I now want to talk about how technology can control people and take away their independence. First off, I'm going to talk about Thad's invention, Lizzie. So basically, Lizzie is a computer that Thad created and improved on throughout the years. Thad wore Lizzie like glasses, and she stayed with him at all times, giving him reminders, saving his memories, and bringing up topics of conversation for him. Lizzie definitely had influence over his train of thought, what he remembered and how he remembered it, as well as when he remembered it, because she would bring up different points and facts depending on the situation Thad was in. So the info that was brought up was done so by Lizzie, not by Thad. And this shows how his train of thought was controlled by technology. This brings me to my next point, that humans are dependent on technology. First of all, we are able to see this in our everyday lives by looking at ourselves and the people around us because to a certain extent we are all dependent on technology. Some examples of this are schools because you have to use technology, at least some technology, to get through school now. Our cell phones are a huge example. If you look around at a public place, chances are you'll see multiple people using their phones. So that's just an example in the real world. People also depend on technology to get them from place to place, using their GPS to help them order their food and even to buy their groceries. So already, our society is very dependent on technology. An example from the podcast is Thad and how he was dependent on Lizzie. So first of all, Thad was dependent on Lizzie because he used her to help him get his PhD. He also used Lizzie all day, every day, and the only time he didn't use Lizzie was when he would shower, when he would sleep, and on his wedding day. So his consistent use of Lizzie shows that he must have had some sort of dependence to Lizzie. You can see that as technology has advanced, people have only become more dependent on it. Calculators are a good example of this, even though they've been around for a while, because people no longer have to memorize math problems or calculate things on paper or in their heads because they have technology to do it for them. So all of these things that I talked about show how people depend and rely on technology, and this has a negative impact on our society. Because of how dependent people are on technology, I want to argue the point that people should not be allowed to use technology like Lizzie in order to earn degrees. As I mentioned in the last slide, Thad earned his PhD with the help of Lizzie. I want to argue with the podcast by saying I do not think this should be allowed. I think that people should be expected to know information about the topics they are studying. I feel like the validity of one's degree is taken away when they have used technology such as Lizzie to help them earn their degree. I think that students being able to use technology like Lizzie in order to earn degrees will have an overall negative effect on our society. When you think about it, Lizzie is taking away all the hard work that comes with earning a degree. It can be argued that the hardest part of school is memorization and the application of information, and these are two of the main things that Lizzie does for Thad. I think that this will have negative outcomes because people with degrees won't really know the information they should if they use technology like Lizzie. Another point from the podcast that I wanted to argue against is when they said that technology like Lizzie was the same thing as using eyeglasses. I find this claim a little ridiculous because eyeglasses are there to help people who are unable to use their eyes properly, while a device like Lizzie or Google Glass is basically there to do the work of the brain by providing people with information they don't have, remembering things for them, and changing what they think about and when they think about it. So that was just a quick point I wanted to talk about from the podcast because I think that comparing something as helpful and harmless as eyeglasses to a device like Lizzie makes the device seem a little bit less harmful than it really is. So I just wanted to touch on that part really quick. So the last point I wanted to talk about was the possibility of technology failing. Although it's unlikely that this would happen, there is a possibility that our power grid could be wiped out, leaving us with no electricity and no way to use technology. So if something like this happened, or even something less dramatic, such as having your device like Lizzie run out of battery while you're at work, or losing it, or having it break, or whatever it is, what if technology stopped working and you didn't have the ability to use it? What would you do? Especially if you're dependent on it to remember things for you. A real-world scenario that I wanted to use as an example would be medical professionals, such as nurses and doctors, having the ability to use technology such as Lizzie to help them complete their schooling and to, be successful in their career. What if their technology were to fail? However it were to fail, what would they do? They wouldn't have any more access to their information or facts that they would need in order to do their job properly, and that might cause them to struggle when providing care to patients, ultimately compromising the well-being of patients. There could probably be a lot of negative outcomes because of this. So in conclusion, I think that yes, technology has so many benefits and positive impacts on society, and there are a lot of different ways that technology can help us, and it can take away a lot of the difficult work that we would otherwise have to do. And it can also make our society better and save people and do a lot of positive things. But I do think that overall technology advancing is negative on our society in the way that we use our brains, interact with people, the way that we think, and the way that we remember. So I think that it's a negative thing to have a society that is dependent on technology. And then I just have the citation for the Invisibilia podcast that I used to help support a lot of my claims. Anyway, thank you for listening to my PowerPoint.